So I can just start the answer saying that at the moment, the recent pictures of Travaglini family, you can barely see any men because it's only my father. So it's my sister and I as a fifth generation. It's my mother as a direct new generation. So from Travaglini family, we have 2 dogs and 2 cats, all female. So sometimes I actually look at my father and say, poor man, it doesn't have any particular influence in decision. Of course, I'm joking, but the presence, at least in our family, is of course very important in terms of the presence of women into this business.
Welcome to this special Clubhouse session of the Italian Wine Podcast. Listen in as members of the Italian wine community engage in fascinating conversations about contemporary wine topics. If you enjoyed the show, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. And remember to subscribe and rate the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your pods.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Ambassador's Corner. My name is Carla Ravagnolo, and today I'm pleased to welcome Cameron Jones and her guest Alessia Travaglini from Travaglini Estate. Welcome, everybody.
Hi, Carla.
Hello. Hi, Carla. Thanks for inviting.
Of course. I have a very quick question for Cameron just to start a little bit this conversation. So, Cameron, why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about yourself and what led you to invite Alessia here with us today?
Sure, no problem. Yes, thanks so much for having me. So I had a 25-year career as an investment banker, and then turned my love affair of wine into to the wine industry by moving to France in 2017. I worked through to the WSET diploma, and I was living in the Cru Beaujolais village of Saint-Amour since 2019, and only just moved back to Australia a few weeks ago. So I'm coming to you live at 2:30 in the morning. I was judging at various wine competitions across Europe, but my love affair for Italian wine was very strong. So I'm a Valpolicella educator, Barolo and Barbaresco ambassador, and recently this year I became a Vinitaly Italian wine ambassador, which I'm very proud of, and I've just been accepted into the Master of Wine program. So I'm very, very excited to be here, and I was very lucky earlier this year to meet Alessia on my way to the Vinitaly Academy at her family winery estate, Travaglini Estate.
This is a lot. This is very intense, and actually, I wanna say kudos to you for like all your accomplishments, your great background, like moving to Europe and now back to Australia. That sounds very, very interesting. So I'm actually curious to know, what are the learning objectives from this interview? What should we expect?
Well, I think this interview is hoping that we can give listeners insights into how Travaglini balances tradition, innovation, along with the unique terroir of the Gattinara wine region. We'll talk about the winery's adaptation to climate change. We'll also have a look at sort of recent investments in the Gattinara region and how that's impacted the broader region. And then we'll talk about Alessia's future vision for the winery and her deep personal connection to the Italian wine culture. And then to top it all off, Alessia's going to share a few fun wine pairing, comfort food, and her first memory of tasting facts along the way. So expect a bit of a mix of inspiration, some knowledge about a new or wine region that you may not know much about before, and then we're going to try and have a bit of fun along the way.
That sounds lovely. So, well, I think it's time to dig into it. So I'll pass the mic to you, Cameron, so you can properly introduce your guest.
Fantastic. Thanks, Carla. So, Alessia, would you like to walk us through your bio?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Cameron, for inviting me at this podcast. It's such a great pleasure to introduce myself and to go through all the different topics that you mentioned regarding Travaglini, regarding a little bit of the past, but a little bit of the future as well, and of course the Gattinara areas in general. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you again. Regarding myself, actually, I was born and raised in this very small village of Gattinara, which is located in the very north part of Piemonte. And I only left Gattinara for my university period, for some studies, for a little period of only 6 months when I was settled in New York for a working experience, always into the wine business. So despite I tried to live in Milan, despite I lived for a certain moment in other cities in Italy and especially in the United States, in cities where actually you can have everything you want, I always felt that the call from going back home, because being here, despite this a very, very small village, but is surrounded by nature, you are literally in the middle of the nature, is something that really makes me feel happy. And I'm so proud to say that since I was very young, I always thought about my career, both in terms of education, so the studies, the schools actually that I choose, always knowing that my future would have been here at the Travaglini winery. I probably was answering to everyone that was asking me the classic question to a child: what would you like to do in the future or when you're old? And I think that my answer has always been the same. So following my family's steps and be involved actually into the wine business. This is how I grew up, and this is how I started to be not only as it never been always such a thing of works. At the beginning, of course, for me it was just a game. Was spending time with my family. Was spending time playing with everyday things that my family always introduced me at. So this is a little bit my short career. I'm only 27 right now, but 6 years ago I joined the winery after all my studies and the different experience. And now I'm in charge. I'm the expert manager officially of the winery. So I'm in charge of, I can say, the almost 55-6% of all the business. This is such a great responsibility. My family leave me a little bit of space to grow, to take decision, and for me it has always been a great challenge. And traveling everywhere in the world, actually, in this last 3-4 years, after saying that, I can go back to what I was telling you at the beginning. That despite I travel the world, I always happy to go back where my roots are.
Well, I can understand that. Having been to the region, it is truly so beautiful. And then, I think as you talk about your family history, I think that sort of leads perfectly into. It was something that really captivated me when I met you and when we toured through the winery, was this family legacy that you've got. So, your family's been producing wine in Gattinara since the 1920s. So, how do you balance honouring traditional winemaking practices with introducing modern innovations at Travaglini?
So the presence of the fifth generation since 2019, when my sister and I, when we joined the winery, has certainly brought new energy, new ideas, new projects, but above all, different ways of working or actually approaching a job. So we can talk about method. So this is what we always try to do since when we joined the winery. But I can say that there is still a lot of work to do, because changing a system, changing a mindset, it really takes time and energy. It doesn't necessarily need to change something, but at least updating something. So from what we have inherited from the past and try to adapt for the future. But both my sister and I, we are both aware of the importance of preserving the past, preserving all the material and immaterial heritage that we have from the previous generation, which now is a great wealth. This is why our commitment is try to keep the tradition, if we just can say that to generalize, as the central kind of fulcrum, our way of thinking, our way of understanding something, but build everything else with a vision of the future and, of course, all its challenges. So basically is keeping what our previous generation have done so far and try to bring forward for the future, but always facing the innovation, which is definitely what I think also the previous generation have done, because our winery is known for our important tradition that we have. But if we are seeing a growth generation after generation is that because we had this philosophy starting from my parents, my grandparents, and so on.
Great. And I suppose there's probably no greater symbol of that history and the heritage behind your wine label than your very unique and very signature bottle design. So you have this beautiful shaped bottle. It's very, very iconic. I implore everyone to immediately Google Travaglini Gattinara Nebbiolo, and you'll see this really unique bottle shape. You explained a lot to me when we met. Could you just tell us a little bit more about the shape, what the evolution has meant, and what it means to you for the continuing that tradition?
Thanks for asking, because this is, of course, one of the most important symbol of just the Travaglini, not just the Travaglini brand, but also is a very important thing from Travaglini as a family. And this bottle, this iconic bottle, I would like to add, was designed by my grandfather in 1958. So actually, we are almost about to celebrate the 70th anniversary of this bottle shape in a couple of years. Actually, I can tell you that this bottle was designed for a specific reason, so for a specific need at that time. It was not just a shape. It was not just a bottle different from the standard one, I can say, but was a need, because you have to think about going back of 70, 80, 90 years, and imagine that the way of making wine and the technologies, the know-how, the instrument that at that time the winemaker had at disposal were completely different to what we have now as a simply know-how. So basically, the wine made at that time probably were a little bit less filtered than now, less clear. So it was easier to find a little bit of sediment. So my grandfather, since were looking for having a perfect wine into the glass, he designed this specific bottle shape with different curves in all the sides, so in the front, in the back, and in the two lateral sides. Especially the front course is the most important, because when you flat the wine in the flat position to serve the wine into the glass, actually this little curves is able to catch eventual sediment. It was properly designed to being able to reduce the velocity of the bubble of air that naturally enter when you incline the bottle. And this, for the specific shape, allows all the sediment not to be moved into the wine, but just slowly move down to this part of the belly of the bottle. So that's why this bottle is known also as a bottle decanter. So it was designed to be a bottle with the function of a decanter. That probably at that time, at least in Gattinara, the decanter didn't exist or probably was not around. So it has been a great invention at that time. My grandfather was a visionary man, because he did many things besides just the bottle shape. And he patented this project, this design in 1982. After he received a very bad review from a journalist who described this bottle as a bad-looking, horrible, or at least not functional. And in that year, that specific vintage, my grandfather actually bottled a certain quantity in just the standard Bordeaux bottle shape, and the rest in our classic Gattinara bottle, to see what the final customer would prefer. And the answer actually was the Travaglini bottle shape, because at the end of the year, the other bottles remain unsold because people were not able to recognize the Travaglini brand in the other bottles. That's the history. But the more I travel, the more I can hear new stories, and it's fun, because I think that also this bottle now is hidden some ideas of the people that are drinking our Gattinara. So that's why I've heard many legends, many stories, one more funnier than the other.
Yeah, thanks for that. It really is amazing. And I remember you explained to me at the time that you introduced a new bottling line into the winery, and at significant expense, such as your commitment to the tradition, at significant expense to be able to accommodate, these unique bottle shape moving along the bottling line.
Yeah, this is, of course, one of the most important problems that we have at the winery because, as you can imagine, everything must be designed specifically for this design, this bottle shape. Starting just from the bottling machine that last year we recently changed into a new one, and it took us more than a year for engineers design all the little parts and to adapt the standard pieces to new models for this particular bottle, but also going through the whole line. So the labeling machine. Think about that. Some of the process we are forced to do by hand because there's no machines that are able to mechanize the process. For example, just to give you an idea, all the cases, the cardboard cases for just the shipping, of course, designed on measure. So as you can imagine, everything means higher cost. But of course, just putting beside the cost issue, I think that presenting this bottle around the world is carrying more positive things, much more than the negative, because it's immediately recognizable. People sometimes cannot remember maybe the Travaglini names because I think that it's not so easy to remember on the other side of the world, but they are able to remember the strange bottle shape. So he's immediately recognizable. So this is, now we can talk about marketing, now we can talk about brand, but of course, this was not in the past.
No, that's fantastic. Thanks for explaining that. So I'm sure our listeners will have fun going out and trying to find these bottles. Okay, so let's turn our attention a little bit to Gattinara as a region. You know, its terroir is known for the rocky, iron-rich soils that come from the nearby volcano Monte Rosa. How do these characteristics influence the flavour profile of your Nebbiolo wines, and what challenges do they present in viticulture?
So consider that the soil of Gattinara has a very unique origin because back in 2009, so not many years ago, it was discovered the origin of an ancient, huge volcano that dates back 17 million years ago. So the volcanic soil origin is, of course, one of the most important things that makes Gattinara so different from other style of Nebbiolo. Gattinara's unique terroir, which is, as you correctly said, rocky and iron-rich based, but not just iron, is of course one of the most present mineral here. But we have a lot of manganese, we have a lot of basalts, we have a lot of granite as well, which of course makes the brilliant structure and the hard and acidic structure of the soil actually profoundly shapes the flavor profile of the Nebbiolo that comes, of course, from Gattinara. The soils provide, of course, a good drainage. This means that when it's raining a lot, for example, this season, we were able to immediately come into the vineyard to work with tractor, which is, of course, a positive thing that we consider in terms of working things. So this hard type of subsoil actually forced the vines to, and especially the roots of the vines, to go deep for searching for nutrients. And the immediately result is, of course, impacting in a mineral character on the wines and a very good complexity. In general, as a consequence, the Gattinara Nebbiolos showing a good acidity, firm tannins, and distinctive notes of red fruits, rose petals, small berries or wild berries. So, and with a very salty and mineral final. In terms of challenges, the soil can make vineyard management demanding. I mean, when we have just starting from the beginning, when we have to work the subsoil for planting a new vineyard, I can tell you that it's very expensive. It takes generally longer time than normal because it's not just moving the soil, but it's also when you remove the first layer of soil, which is the most fertile part, you only find hard rocks that you have to break with a specific machine. So it takes time, it's very long, and it's very expensive, as you imagine. And of course, the vines are more vulnerable to drought stress, especially when it's a little bit of drier vintages like 2017, like 2022, that has been very dry. But despite that, which are the characteristic immediately related to the type of rocky soil that we have, once the roots are settled in the very deep part of soil, I can tell you 3, 4, 5 meters easily deep, we are pretty lucky because we receive underground natural springs from the surrounding mountain, from the surrounding Alps, and especially the Monte Rosa, which provides at least enough humidity for the vines to not suffer as much as other region, especially when it's a dry vintage. So it's definitely challenges when the vineyards are pretty new, but once they are settled, they are living in a very lucky areas actually. So that's the reason why the patrimony of our winery is having some of the oldest vineyards that goes up to 80, 85 years old.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it's certainly a very unique terroir. And if you're there on a clear day, the Monte Rosa, looms very large through those hillsides, and it's really makes for a spectacular landscape. So thanks for explaining that. Again, if we talk about the region, in 2018, Roberto Conterno, the very large, very famous Barolo producer, they acquired Nervi Estate in Gattinara. So that really brought some renewed attention to Gattinara in the region. How has this influenced the region's wine industry and perhaps Travaglini's approach to winemaking?
I think that Roberto has certainly made a great quality investment back in 2019, if I'm not wrong, purchasing one of the most important wineries in Gattinara, which is, of course, Nervi, and a winery that have made the history of this area as well with other few in Gattinara. But of course, by investing in a very qualitative way, because it's not just buying an existing winery. I think that he invested a lot of money for renovating the winery, renovating the cellar, renovating the vineyards, changing the style and changing the approach. So it was definitely a positive thing for Gattinara. Would have been definitely not as good as here like this if he just bought the winery and without investing. So that's I think that is the big differences. He invested a lot of money to raise the quality of the winery, to raise the attention on Gattinara, and it really helps because it kind of I can say that he put a light on this small wine region. This means that the story in Gattinara is very long. We are one of the oldest winery there, and my family always believed in the importance and in the potential of this wine region, always investing step by step. And I think that after everything has made in the previous generation, the previous decades, he really helped to attire at least an interest on this wine region for sure, because of his name, because of the importance of his person and its person and his name, of course. I think that the area is gradually gaining a great and positive reputation years after years and step after step, but it's growing in general, not just for the people in this business sector, so in the wine business, but it's also increasing the appreciation from just the wine lovers because of the particular style of Gattinara, because for the interest of visiting a smaller winery, the history, the interesting from them to visit the vineyards, to visit something different from, of course, something that they knew, some other Nebbiolo that they knew from Piemonte, and the need of discovering something new. But also I think that is growing so much for the very good quality ratio, price per quality that this wine region is offering. Just talking about our style, as you probably know and taste, because the wine talks itself, we never change in I mean, we have not changed the style of our wines or anything in particular. Just right after the Roberto Conterno acquisition, if it's your question. But of course, we kept our style, our consumer, our clientele, and our philosophy towards actually.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I think that's really important. You know, I found that what was so nice about discovering Gattinara as a region was really understanding that, you know, Barolo and Barbaresco, you know, obviously have a very famous reputation, but it's amazing to see some of these phenomenal wines that you're producing in the Gattinara region. Great expressions of Nebbiolo, but different terroir driven expressions, and I think that's really exciting. So for collectors and for wine lovers, Gattinara wines have a great ability to age. What advice would you give to collectors about storing and enjoying Travaglini and Gattinara wines over time?
So for sure, Gattinara style, so the Nebbiolo from this northern region is pretty much different from the classic Barolo and Barbaresco, which is of course most famous. But these differences are pretty much underlined by multiple points. First of all, is definitely the microclimate because we are so close to the Alps, so close to the mountains. So I can tell you that during a year we have about 2.5 degrees less than the average as an annual average compared to the South Piedmont region. So of course this one has a direct impact on the freshness, on the acidity, on the balance in our wines. Of course, the terroir, as I mentioned, the different origin, the presence of a lot of rocks is impacting not just in the style, but also in the, I think that in the aging potential as well, because it's underlining some of the saltiness, some of the minerality that you can feel in the palate, and of course the different pH and the acidity, which is exalted by the presence of the rocks in our soil. Of course, talking about the wine, the less alcohol that we have in our wines as a consequence of the first 2 points that I mentioned. And of course, the price point are, I always say that are definitely very, very impacting. In terms of aging potential, I cannot say that there are differences because the oldest wine that I tasted from Gattinara in the last 2-3 years has been classic Gattinara, so not even a Riserva, which of course with less aging because from the classic Gattinara, we have 3 years aging, and Reserva, we have 6 years aging. So there's a little bit of differences in terms of structure and aging potential. So I tasted a classic Gattinara 1958. I tasted a classic Gattinara 1955. So wines that they were, because I tasted 2 years ago, 1 year ago. So more than 60 years. I think that they were incredibly brilliant, incredibly alive. So I was so surprised about the color that has always been a little bit less concentrate, a little bit less dark than what would you imagine from a different Nebbiolo from a different region, but the notes, the acidity, the tannins were still very brilliant and incredibly alive. I also can mention something more recent, some 79, some 1990. So I think that easily the aging potential of the wine can be. It's a difficult answer because if I have to say the perfect drink age, drink windows, which is keeping a good balance of fruitness, a good balance of freshness, not extremely evolution of the wine and the notes, but still very fresh and bright, I can tell you 20, 25, 30 years old. Of course, depending the different vintages. But if someone loves to discover so aged wines, I think that the aging potential can go up to 50, 60 years, as I mentioned as an example. this is my answer. So I can say that the aging potential is very important, but then it always depends on the style and the preference of the consumer, actually, and the palate.
That's amazing. You're making me very, very jealous and very thirsty at this hour. That's great. Thanks for explaining all of that. So let's turn to climate change. It's a topic that needs to be discussed and that people need to understand. So with the challenges from climate change, how is Travaglini, adapting its vineyard management, perhaps winemaking processes? How are you sort of embracing climate change, and where do you see it affecting the region?
Yes, this is definitely one of the most discussed topic in the recent actually years, of course. And I can say, so starting from this, I can say that Gattinara at the moment is living a very positive situation, because we are in a very particular geographic position thanks to the presence just behind the vineyards of the Alps, which are definitely impacting so much in the microclimate. I think that this wine region is very protected from particular movements of the storms and the winds and everything. That I can tell you that the climate change exists, is real, but is less impacting than other wine regions, both in Piedmont, but everywhere in Italy. I can just give you a quick example. I tasted some of the old, both Barolo and Barbaresco, and some very old Gattinaras. And we can start from 50, 60 years ago, between 12 and 12.5 alcohol on the labels for both wine region. So now Gattinara sometimes barely reach the 13.5. For example, now our current vintage is 2018, and that vintage was one example that barely reach. Not all the vineyards reach 13.5. So the average was 13.4, 13.3. Some of the vintage, kind of warmer vintage, reach 13.8 to 13.9 as an average. But luckily, we are still below 14. While other wine region in Italy, just to mention Barolo and Barbaresco, you can see 14, 14.5, some 15 alcohol as well. So saying that, I think that Gattinara is living his positive moment of life, because is really protected by the presence of the Alps. It's not just the altitude, because in terms of altitude it's not extremely higher, but because the vineyards goes up to 500 meters, so it's not extremely high, but is the very particular geographical position. Also, talking about climate change, we know that nature is incredibly able to obtain its own balance. And if you come to Gattinara, if you go up in the vineyard, you can see that the presence of the nature is very high, is very well integrated into the human activities in the vineyard, because all the vineyards are really surrounded by forest, wild areas, trees, and as you know, as all the studies say, they are able to refresh the temperature. They are impacting in what is the temperature around. Also, I can say that now we are living in a positive situation. I don't know what will be the situation of the future. Of course, this is going to be like in the worse and worse probably every year, but at least is lower. In terms of what we do, starting from the last 10 years, actually, we are monitoring, using technologies to monitor the vineyard's microclimate in collaboration with our consortium that provided a monitoring station. So we're able to track the temperature, rainfall, humidity. This is the classic things that people start to do in order to be able to have data, have information, and works properly, act properly, because of the different things that are changing. Also, the management of the vineyards. So we are still keeping the Guyot system, because at the moment Guyot is the best trellis system for the Nebbiolo. So at the moment there's no idea of changing this or trying to change this, but at least we are planting the new vineyards in a different way, because starting from the past, so from the oldest vineyards, when my grandfather first planted from the old system that is called the Maggiorina or Tramasette, which were popular in Gattinara, into Guyot, the distance of every plant was about 1 meter and 30 centimeters, which is pretty high compared to the average now. And now then we, from the beginning of 2000, we go back to 90, 80 centimeters in order to have less production, more concentration. But now, especially after some of the season like 2021, 2022, and 2023, the recent vineyards that we have planted, we are now going back to 100 centimeters, 1 meters and 10. So a little bit more distance to reduce the competition between the vines and reduce the problems of stress from water that they could have in some of the drier vintages that is the expectation of the impact of the climate change. We have in our vineyards 5 different buildings that are able to collect rainfall water. This, especially after the 2022 vintages, we were struggling for the lack of water. So having this building that only have access to collect the rainwater is definitely something in favor of the nature. Actually, we did a very important selection of the clones in terms of Nebbiolo. My father actually did a collaboration some years ago with the University of Turin to focus on using 18 different Nebbiolo clones that were selected for being able to adapt better to the characteristics of the Gattinara, both on the microclimates, both on the soil type. Some of them are really doing great. Some others are not the best one, as in terms of the result that we can get. But at least we are experimenting 18 different clones in order to try to find the best clones for the particular terroir that is in the specific vineyard. Of course, the harvesting strategies has changed a little bit. We are now doing kind of 3 different harvests for different wines, but also this means a very strict selection in the vineyard. We are monitoring much more than in the past the ripening phase. So starting from the end of August, actually, we are taking samples weekly to our lab to monitor the ripen in order to be prepared exactly when is the best moment. If we want to be a little bit earlier to keep a little bit more acidity, or eventually later if the vintage allows us to have more roundness. So adapting the harvesting strategies has been a good update that we've done in the winemaking process, and of course the precision of fermentation. So we are updating the computer system that are able to control the temperature during the fermentation, the automatic pumping overs, or adapt of the vat. So intelligence in our cellar is of course helping so much. At the moment, these are the strategies that we are impacting and we are focusing on in the last years.
That's amazing. So, it's every step of the process. It's from the vineyard, looking at existing vineyards. It's everything you're planting. It's everything through the winemaking process and the final wines. So, and it's great that you're a pioneer in the region. That tradition of being so dedicated to Gattinara as a region is really great. One thing I'd like to move to now is just is women in the wine industry. So as a female leader in the wine industry, what challenges have you faced, and how do you see the role of women evolving in the Italian winemaking?
So I can just start the answer saying that at the moment, the recent pictures of Travaglini family, you can barely see any men because it's only my father. So it's my sister and I as a fifth generation. It's my mother as a direct new generation. So from Travaglini family, we have 2 dogs and 2 cats, all female. So sometimes I actually look at my father and say, poor man, it doesn't have any particular influence in decision. Of course, I'm joking, but the presence, at least in our family, is of course very important in terms of the presence of women into this business. In Turkey, generally speaking, there's a lot to talk about these topics. Is one of the questions that I always asked during this type of interview or other situation. But I can say that in this probably in the sector this sector actually in the previous generation for probably is historical reason or historical context, it's always been more male. But in the recent decades, this has completely changed. I mean, the more I travel, the more I go to visit wineries, the more I meet people, the more women I see as a newer generation, or just people that loves this wine business and this sector. So I think that I'm pretty like, because I think that there's a lot of respect for women. I've never I can say that I've never had any particular bad experience to mention. I always feel respected, even if I speak with eldest people or newer generation, male or women, doesn't matter. I think that has now become very common to deal with a male or a woman into this business. I don't know if it's the same for you, but I never felt embarrassed, or I never felt particular with a bad feeling because I was a woman or not or a man, a male. So totally fine.
That's great, and it's it really is truly inspirational, and I think for other women in the wine industry around the world, it's really important for them to see inspiring and iconic figures like yourself. So let's have a little bit of fun. Let's talk about your first wine memory. So you grow up in this wonderful wine estate. You're surrounded by vineyards. Do you remember the first time you tasted wine and what that experience was like?
I think that my first taste of wine was when I followed my mother into the cellar with some customers that were just doing a visit at the winery some years ago, and hidden among the barriques, I was opening the cork and put my finger in to taste the wine. But clearly, they always discover me because I left traces behind me, so I was not able to close properly the cork of the barriques, or I was I actually had a little bit of wine in my on my lips, or every time I was discovered. But I have a clear memory of this things. I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old, not more. But generally speaking, since I was a child, I remember many moments spent with my family or with our collaborators or with customers within the company. So after school, my sister and we couldn't wait to go back home and, playing in the at the winery. So just stay close to our parents, or I have very beautiful memories during harvest time, going up in the vineyards and trying to do some works, but at least have fun, because it was not a work, of course. It was spending good time at open air, spending good time with good people, spending good time with my family, and playing around that things. So I felt that I was really lucky at the time, and I was try always to put my finger on glasses of wine. And when I get a little bit older, like probably 12, 15, 16 years old, like 14 actually, I started to drink a little bit of wine, more and more and more, arriving now. This is part of course, my experience that I developed in the years.
That's amazing. Yeah, I suppose that's that is that sort of like guilty hidden sort of pleasure when you grow up in a wine estate, you're wondering what it's all about, the temptation to drink it. I did laugh a little bit to myself when you said you stuck your finger into the bottle and had a little taste. I think that's a very fun experience for a kid to go through. I imagine your eyes probably lit up, and and your love affair for not only your family's wines, but also for wine in general. I think that probably started that was ignited that one day in the cellar. Thanks for sharing that. That was really lovely. So then, if we talk about your sort of go-to comfort food pairing, if you just want to relax at home, and what's your favorite comfort food to pair with a glass of Travaglini Gattinara? Is it something classically Italian, or do you have a bit of a guilty pleasure that might actually surprise people, or both?
I grew up with my grandmother's homemade Piemonte's recipes, and I'm strictly convinced that in a beautiful country as Italy there's a very close connection between regional cuisine and wines. So, but despite I know that, and I've learned actually traveling everywhere in the world that Gattinara pairs very well with many different types of cuisines. I also have to say that I'm very curious to try multiple cuisines. I'm very curious to try different things and strange pairings, strange ingredients, strange recipes from everywhere in the world. But I'm very connected to. I'm deeply connected to the place that I come from, and I can say that when I want to enjoy and drink a glass of Gattinara, I always cooked a great risotto, which is of course a very classic dish from this region and from especially this area, because we are so close to the rice fields. I love cooking, and risotto is something that I really enjoy cooking and really enjoy eating.
That's fantastic. That is sort of summed it up perfectly, I suppose. The risotto from the region is really truly spectacular, and what a great pairing. So then, if we talked about your perfect dinner guests, so if you could invite any three people, past or present, to a dinner with Travaglini wines, who would they be, and what wine from your collection would you serve?
So this is probably the strangest question that I was asked to answer, and I actually am thinking about the answer because it's not easy. So I have I can say that if I'm thinking about the past, Dom Perignon is always fascinating me because I have a little passion from Champagne. I love Champagne. I love the region. Is beside the Piedmont, that of course is where I come from and where I live, is one of the first wine trip that I did to discover a wine region. And when I was pretty young, so it was probably back at the high school, final thesis that I did, I was including Dom Perignon, and I was connecting his figures not just on the wines, but also in different subjects that I had to explain and to deal with. So for me, it's always been very fascinating, and to discover and to try to imagine how he comes out with the discovery of how to make bubbles by chance or not, but also everything that was implemented in terms of techniques or everything after on the bubbles. So this is the first answer. The second answer is Angelo Gaia. To me is one of the person that really made the history of Piemonte wines, talking about something more recent. I met him multiple times, so we had multiple conversation, and every time it's always fascinating to hear him talking. And I think that if I close my eyes and I'm thinking about to be sitting in a beautiful dinner, I would love to have a conversation with him, talking about everything regarding the wine, but not only. If I have to add another person, I don't know what to answer, so I can say I want to invite you, Cameron, to thank you for the invitation of this podcast. Sorry for the last answer; it was not probably perfectly regarding your question, but at least I give you an answer, and I had the pleasure to have this conversation that we have through a phone, maybe in front of each other.
Look, from my perspective, I think that's the most perfect answer, because I get to come and join you, and and have dinner with Dom Perignon and Angelo Gaia. So that to me was the perfect answer. So we've got one more sort of question before we wrap things up, and this is about the future vision for Travaglini. So you're a member of the next generation, leading Travaglini. What are your aspirations for the winery's future, and how do you envision its role in the evolving landscape of Italian wine?
So I'm absolutely convinced of the potential and the growth of this Gattinara wine region, starting from now, going up in the future years. I think that we are only at the beginning. There's a lot of things to do, not just as a winery, but as an appellation. I think that there's so much space to grow, to do better, to improve, to raise the quality as a general wine region. I know from my perspective, and I know from my family and our vision, that we are investing so much in all of these things to raise the quality, to get Gattinara known everywhere in the world. So just to give you an idea, I traveled for 1 month and a half in the recent weeks, so everywhere in the world, to invest and not just promote Travaglini, but also educate people in the differences between what they know and Gattinara. I have many ideas in store, both in the production aspect, because I really love that side of the winery, even if it's something that I don't do physically every day, because I'm of course more concentrated in the sales side. So I have also a lot of projects in what concern me mostly, and especially in the business organization, to do a better management and, of course, better efficiency, talking about just the winery. And, for example, in this recent years, we have renovated the whole winery. We are investing in the hospitality part, not creating any restaurant or rooms, but the hospitality in terms of being able to welcome people to visit the winery, to taste the wine, to talk with us, and to really see what we do, because it's the only way to grow and to let people really understand these wines and this appellation.
Amazing. Alessia, thank you so much for joining me on Ambassador's Corner. And thank you for everything that your family is doing for the wines of the Gattinara region, and for making the beautiful wines that you do. It's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you, and I look forward to catching up at some stage soon.
It has been a pleasure to talk with you. I renovate. My greetings to you, and thank you very, very much for inviting me at this podcast. It has been a very great pleasure to go through all these topics and answers.
Well, I think this is a wrap. So thank you, everyone. It's been amazing. So congrats, actually, for your first interview. Hope you had fun.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.